Alex's spaceship came crashing down through the atmosphere, a chaotic ball of flames and twisted metal. It landed with a thud in an unfamiliar jungle, a patch of green terrain that stretched as far as the eye could see. His heart pounded in his chest as he scrambled to unbuckle himself from the wreckage. Smoke swirled around him, making his vision blurry. His head throbbed from the impact, and a part of his helmet had cracked, but he was still alive, barely. Surviving this is step one, he muttered to himself, unsteady on his feet as he crawled out of the wreckage. The air smelled of fresh earth, the kind of crisp scent that only a planet untouched by human hands could have. The jungle was eerily quiet, save for the rustling of leaves. His hands were shaking from the adrenaline coursing through him, but there was no time to waste. He needed to find shelter or, better yet, a way off this rock. With a glance around, he realized that nothing seemed familiar. The trees here were too large, the sky too green, and the ground too soft for any planet he knew. Then he heard it. A heavy thump. The ground shook. Alex froze, his heart skipping a beat. He had no weapons, no gear, and no idea what this place held. Slowly, cautiously, he peered through the brush, only to come face to face with the largest woman he had ever seen. Towering at least 20 feet tall, her golden skin shimmered in the dim light, and her piercing green eyes seemed to glow with an unearthly intensity. Her expression was unreadable, but she stood still, watching him, her posture regal and poised. Hello?" Alex stammered, his voice cracking as his throat tightened. He didn't know what he was expecting, an alien monster, a hostile force, but this was something entirely different. The giant woman tilted her head slightly, studying him, her long, dark hair cascading down her back in waves that looked like they belonged to some celestial being. She didn't speak. Instead, she motioned for him to follow her. A strange mix of confusion and disbelief gripped Alex as he obeyed, his legs like jelly beneath him. This wasn't how any of his training had prepared him for first contact. The woman led him deeper into the jungle, past towering trees and thick vines. The deeper they went, the more Alex felt like he was walking into another world entirely. They arrived at a large clearing, where several more giant women gathered, their beauty impossible to ignore. Their skin glowed with an almost ethereal radiance, and their eyes were sharp, alert. Alex found himself wondering if they were all this beautiful, or if he was just too stunned to think clearly. These women, tall, strong, and somehow graceful, seemed to move with purpose, as though they were in charge of this entire planet. Then, one of them stepped forward, speaking in a melodic voice that was strange but somehow familiar. "You are human," she said, not a question, but a statement. Alex nodded, unsure of how to respond. "You are to help us." "Help?" Alex repeated, his confusion growing. I'm just a stranded astronaut. I'm not exactly equipped for anything." The woman smiled, if you could call it that, and motioned to the others. "We require your assistance. But first, you must do something for us." This wasn't at all what Alex had expected. He'd come here looking for a way home, not to be caught up in some bizarre alien ritual. But what else could he do? He had to play along if he wanted to survive. Before he could ask more questions, one of the women handed him a small, intricately carved stone tablet. "You must rate us," she explained simply. Alex blinked. "Rate? You mean like on a scale or something?" He was still processing everything that was happening. "Yes. We are evaluating ourselves for genetic purposes," she said, looking almost apologetic. "The rating determines who will be allowed to advance." "Advance?" Alex repeated, still stuck on the idea of rating them like some bizarre beauty contest. "What does that even mean?" "Each of us must be assessed based on various qualities." Another woman spoke up. "Beauty, grace, intelligence, strength. The rating helps us determine our place in society." Alex felt his face flush, and he glanced over at the women, who stood there, expectantly waiting for him to begin this absurd task. It wasn't just the situation that was bizarre, it was the fact that these towering women, beautiful, intelligent, and obviously powerful, We're asking a mere human for something so strange, so superficial. How could they take this seriously? But the longer he stood there, the more he realized that they did. This wasn't a joke. This was their way of life. A strange, uncomfortable weight settled in his stomach. He cleared his throat. Okay, well, I guess I'll start. Alex's voice trailed off as he took in the first woman before him. Her skin shimmered in the dim light, her muscles sculpted and graceful as she stood there, waiting for his judgment. You're very tall, he muttered, cursing himself for being so awkward. He wasn't exactly a master of diplomacy. Tall is good. The woman nodded approvingly, but Alex caught a glimpse of her eyes narrowing as if she was sizing him up. Then she stepped aside, and another woman took her place. Alex quickly began to rate the next woman. He hesitated, unsure what to say. Was it wrong to mention how stunning her features were? Was that too obvious? He felt like he was in a minefield, not knowing how to step without triggering some kind of disaster. Her skin, however, had a slight glow to it that seemed unnatural in its perfection. Your skin. It's almost glowing, he commented, unsure of how else to explain it. The woman smiled widely. I pride myself on my skin's smoothness. It is my greatest asset. She laughed, but Alex noticed that it didn't sound entirely natural. For the next few women, Alex felt like he was sinking deeper into a hole he couldn't get out of. Each one was more beautiful than the last, each one more perfect in their own way, and each one seemed to be sizing him up just as much as he was sizing them up. By the time he got to the last woman, Maya, he was completely overwhelmed. She stood tall but with an air of quiet confidence. Her golden skin shimmered with what seemed like an inner light, and her green eyes seemed to pierce right through him. So, how would you rate me? She asked, her tone playful yet serious. Alex blinked, not sure what to say. I mean... His words faltered, but something about her made him feel like this wasn't about her looks or his rating. There was something else. Something deeper. He wasn't sure how to explain it, but the connection was instant. The beauty he'd seen in the others seemed to pale in comparison to the warmth and intelligence in her gaze. I think you're more than just beauty, he finally said. There's something else about you. Something that's hard to put into words. Maya's smile softened, her eyes brightening as if she just won some silent victory. The other women around them seemed to notice the shift in the air, but no one interrupted. Tell me more, Maya said, her voice quieter now, almost intimate. Alex swallowed hard, his earlier nervousness dissipating in the face of this strange, unexpected moment. You're unlike anyone I've ever met. And then even the bizarre planet they were on seemed to fade on where he hadn't anticipated, a strange, powerful connection with someone who saw beyond the ratings and judged him for something much more valuable. Alex had barely settled into his new role as the tribe's reluctant beauty rater, when the absurdity of the situation truly began to sink in. The women, with their towering figures and otherworldly beauty, had made it clear that this was no simple game. This was their way of life. The ratings weren't just about vanity, they were about power, societal status, and some archaic evolutionary process that Alex could barely wrap his mind around. Every move he made was scrutinized, every word he spoke seemed to carry more weight than he was comfortable with. Maya had led him to a secluded area where the rest of the tribe had gathered. Alex could see the glances of anticipation, some of the women eyeing him like they were waiting for him to make his first move in a grand, unspoken ritual. He felt the pressure building, the weight of their gaze making him sweat. The tribe had explained that the rating process was more than a superficial evaluation, it was how they ensured their future. Based on how each woman was rated, they would determine their evolutionary trajectory. Maya had warned him. Be careful with your words. These ratings are everything to us. Her voice had been almost too calm, considering how seriously she spoke about their society's dependence on these ratings. But when she spoke those words, Alex saw something different in her eyes. It wasn't just about the ratings for her, it was something deeper. Her expression was one of weariness, as if the expectations had weighed heavily on her for a long time. As Alex began to rate the women, it quickly became clear that there was no easy way out of this. The women, who appeared flawless to him, had each constructed their self-worth around these evaluations. The first woman who came forward had skin that shimmered like polished gold. She grinned at him, expectantly waiting. "Well?" she prompted, tilting her head. "Your skin is shiny," Alex managed to say, though he wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a statement of pure confusion. She seemed to appreciate the comment, nodding with satisfaction. But then she turned away, and Alex felt the uncomfortable weight of judgment from the others. Each woman had her own quirk, her own defining feature, and each one was determined to have her unique asset highlighted. The process was getting more and more absurd. One woman's legs were sculpted, muscular yet smooth, like they had been designed to carry the weight of entire civilizations. Another had perfect, symmetrical features, but when Alex mentioned this, she merely laughed, saying, "Symmetry is overrated." Then there was the woman with the emerald green eyes, who caught Alex staring longer than he intended. She smirked. "You like my eyes, don't you?" she asked, her tone thick with both amusement and a challenge. Yeah? They're stunning," Alex stammered, but she didn't seem impressed. "Is that all?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Alex didn't know what to say. What was he supposed to rate here? There was nothing about these women that seemed tangible to him. It was all so abstract, so perfect, and he felt entirely out of his depth. But as much as he tried to deflect, to make it through without offending anyone, it became increasingly clear that the tribe wasn't just interested in what he thought of their physical features. They were testing him on a deeper level, pushing him to explore his own ideas of beauty, strength, and intelligence. That's when Maya stepped forward again. "You're taking too long," she said, her voice more direct than before. "Why are you hesitating?" Alex felt his throat tighten. The pressure had been mounting, and he wasn't sure how much longer he could take it. "I'm not hesitating," he said, more sharply than he intended. "I'm just trying to figure out what you all actually want me to say. I mean, how do I even begin to rate something like this?" Maya raised her eyebrows, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "You don't need to rate us like you would an object. We're not just displays for your judgment." Her voice softened. "But tell me, Alex, what makes a woman worthy in your eyes?" His mouth went dry. The question wasn't what he expected. He could feel his pulse quickening, the words swirling in his mind, but nothing felt right. How could he explain it? He thought about what he had seen in his lifetime, the beauty ideals pushed on earth, the perfect bodies in magazines, the artificial standards set by society. But Maya wasn't just asking about her beauty. She was asking something deeper, something that made Alex stop and really think. "I don't know," he finally said, the truth escaping him. "I've never really thought about it this way." Maya's eyes softened, a knowing smile appearing. "Most men don't," she replied, almost too gently. "You only see what you're told to see. But beauty is more than the skin or the shape. It's the strength inside you that defines it." Alex was silent. He had always considered himself a simple man, someone who appreciated the typical markers of beauty: smooth skin, long legs, symmetrical faces. But now, standing here in this strange world, he realized that none of it truly mattered. He had fallen into the trap of superficiality, never questioning why he had always been so focused on outward appearance. The realization settled into him slowly, like the shifting of tectonic plates beneath his feet. It wasn't just the beauty that had captivated him in Maya. It was her intelligence, the way she had challenged his thoughts, the way she made him see beyond the surface of things. Maya had shown him a new kind of beauty, one that wasn't just skin deep, but something more profound. As the days passed, Alex began to spend more time with Maya. They would work together on the tribe's scientific project, a mysterious endeavor that seemed to be tied to their evolutionary genetics. But the more they worked together, the more Alex found himself drawn to her, not just for her beauty, but for her sharp mind and her ability to see through the surface-level nonsense that he had once been so consumed by. One evening, as they sat together, reviewing data on their project, Maya looked at him with an intensity that caught him off guard. "Do you understand now?" she asked, her voice low, almost intimate. Alex blinked, momentarily lost in her gaze. "Yeah," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "I think I do." She smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Good. Because we can't keep rating ourselves based on what the world tells us is beautiful. We need to define beauty for ourselves." She paused, then added, "And I think you've just started to see that." Alex nodded, the weight of her words settling deep into him. He had started to see something in her, something that went beyond her appearance. Maya had opened his eyes to a whole new world, one where beauty wasn't just about perfection but about understanding, acceptance, and connection. And though they were in an alien world, working on a mysterious project, Alex realized that what he felt for Maya wasn't just a fleeting attraction, it was something real. And for the first time since his crash landing, Alex didn't feel out of place. He didn't feel like the odd one out in a world of giants. He felt like he belonged. But the deeper he got into this path ahead wouldn't be easy. The tribe's obsession with ratings and beauty wasn't going to just disappear. But he was ready to face it, not as a mere outsider, but as someone who had learned the true meaning of connection. And if he could help her world, maybe he could change himself along the way. Alex had settled into a strange rhythm within the tribe, but the weight of the bizarre tradition still loomed over him. The women of the tribe had grown increasingly comfortable with his presence, each one more eager than the last for his evaluation. He, on the other hand, was beginning to grow increasingly frustrated. What started as a strange ritual had morphed into a constant reminder of just how different this world was from anything he knew. But it wasn't just the tribe's customs that troubled him. It was Maya. He had grown closer to her over the past few days. They had shared quiet moments, deep discussions, and awkward laughter as they worked together on the scientific project that was supposed to help the tribe determine their next evolutionary step. What struck Alex the most was how different Maya was from the other women. She wasn't just beautiful. There was a complexity to her that made her stand out, something that transcended the superficial standards that seemed to dominate their society. Maya's intelligence and wit were sharp, and as they worked side by side, Alex couldn't help but admire how she pushed the boundaries of everything he thought he knew about beauty and strength. She challenged him at every turn, questioning his assumptions, pushing him to see beyond the surface. For the first time in his life, he was starting to understand that true beauty wasn't about flawless skin or perfect symmetry. It was about understanding, depth, and connection. It was on one of their late-night discussions about the tribe's genetic project when the real shift in their relationship happened. They had been poring over the data, trying to make sense of the complex system that governed their society. Maya leaned over, her long fingers tracing the edges of the tablet where the latest set of results were stored. "You're not really paying attention, are you?" she asked, her voice teasing, but there was an edge to it that made Alex look up from the screen. He blinked, realizing that his mind had wandered to her face again. "Damn it," he thought. "I was," Alex said, trying to shake off the thoughts that were beginning to feel all too familiar. "Just processing. This data doesn't make sense. It's all over the place." Maya raised an eyebrow. "It's not the data that's confusing you." Alex froze, his heart pounding. Her gaze was piercing, as though she could see right through him. She wasn't wrong. He had been distracted, by her, by everything around him. And no matter how much he tried to focus on the task at hand, his thoughts always seemed to drift back to Maya. "What's really bothering you, Alex?" she asked, her voice softer now, almost like she was coaxing him into something. He ran a hand through his hair, the frustration bubbling to the surface. "I don't know. It's just this whole thing. I don't belong here. You all have this system, this way of life that makes no sense to me. And I'm just stuck in the middle of it. I don't know how to navigate it anymore." Maya's eyes softened, and she leaned in closer, her warmth enveloping him. "You don't have to navigate it alone," she said. "You never did. Alex exhaled sharply, feeling an overwhelming mixture of relief and anxiety flood through him. He had tried so hard to remain distant, to keep his emotions in check. But standing here, in this alien world, with Maya so close, everything he had been trying to suppress came rushing to the surface. For a moment, there was silence between them. Alex stared into Maya's eyes, and in that silence, everything else seemed to fall away. He wasn't just a lost astronaut on a strange planet anymore. He was a man who had found someone who truly understood him, someone who saw beyond the surface, beyond the ridiculous ratings, and saw him for who he was. "I'm not sure I'm ready for this," Alex muttered, his voice barely audible. The vulnerability of the moment felt overwhelming. Maya smiled softly, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of compassion and understanding. "You don't have to be ready," she said, her tone gentle yet firm. "You just have to be honest." And honesty was something Alex hadn't been able to give to anyone, until now. He had been avoiding the feelings that had been building up for days, not just because of his awkwardness or fear of rejection, but because he was terrified of what it all meant. What would this mean for him? For her? Could a human really belong in a world like this? A world where ratings determined everything, where beauty was both a blessing and a curse. But in that moment, with Maya so close, he didn't care. All that mattered was the connection between them, the shared understanding that went beyond anything he had ever known. "Maybe I'm ready now," Alex whispered, his voice filled with raw honesty. He reached out, his fingers grazing hers, and the electricity between them sparked to life. There was no more pretending, no more hiding. They were both in this together, whatever this was. Maya didn't say anything at first. Instead, she leaned in, her lips brushing against his in a kiss that was soft at first, tentative, as if testing the waters. But as Alex responded, the kiss deepened, growing more urgent, more passionate. The world around them faded, and for a brief moment, nothing else existed but the two of them. When they finally pulled away, both breathless, Alex's mind was spinning. He had kissed her. And it had felt like everything he'd been looking for, everything he hadn't known he needed. "I guess I'm not so lost after all," Alex said, a small, self-deprecating smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Maya chuckled, her fingers tracing the back of his hand. "No, you're not. But you're still figuring it out." And as much as that stung, Alex knew it was true. He was still figuring it all out. Maya, the tribe, the strange planet he had crash-landed on. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid of the unknown. Because with Maya by his side, maybe the unknown wasn't so scary after all. The next few days passed in a blur. Maya and Alex spent every moment they could together, working on the tribe's project and continuing their deep conversations. Alex learned more about the tribe's history and their strange obsession with beauty. They were a society built on surface-level appearances, yet beneath that facade, there was a deep yearning for change. The women had been trapped by their own beauty, their own perfection, for so long that they had forgotten what true strength looked like. As Maya and Alex continued their work, the bond between them deepened. But there was something more, something unspoken. The tribe, once so intent on evaluating every little detail of their lives, was beginning to see the value in something more than ratings. They were starting to understand that beauty, true beauty, wasn't about perfection. It was about strength, resilience, and the courage to be vulnerable. Alex was no longer just a visitor in this strange world. He had found something real here, something that went beyond the surface, beyond the absurd ratings. And as he stood beside Maya, their hands entwined, he realized that he was ready for whatever came next, not because he had figured it all out, but because he had found something worth fighting for. The days passed, and as Alex continued to adjust to life among the tribe, something shifted. What had once been a bizarre, confusing ritual of rating the women began to feel more like a farce. He had spent so much time focused on superficial judgments that he almost forgot why he was really here in the first place. He was meant to help the tribe with their scientific project, which now felt more like an afterthought. His growing connection with Maya had shifted his priorities in ways he hadn't anticipated. The tribe's system, Their obsession with beauty ratings, the rigid rules they lived by, had started to unravel. Maya had made it clear that she didn't buy into it anymore, and for the first time, Alex was beginning to understand why. The idea that something as shallow as appearance could define an individual's worth was not only outdated, it was limiting. But changing an entire society that had functioned under these beliefs for generations wasn't going to be easy. As Maya continued to challenge the norms, Alex found himself helping her more than ever. They would discuss the tribe's project late into the night, trying to make sense of the data and their evolutionary progress. But even more than that, they talked about their feelings, about what it meant to break free from the expectations placed upon them. It wasn't just about them anymore. They were starting to see that their connection could be a catalyst for change, that they could challenge the tribe's entire way of thinking. One evening, Maya turned to Alex as they were reviewing some genetic data, her face thoughtful. "I think we're ready," she said, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "It's time we share what we've learned." Alex paused, his eyes locking with hers. He knew what she meant. They had been discussing how to confront the tribe, how to explain that their way of life needed to evolve, how beauty ratings couldn't continue to define their futures. It was a dangerous proposition, but Alex had come to realize that it was the only way forward. "Are you sure?" Alex asked. "I mean, this isn't going to be easy. We'll be challenging everything they've known." Maya nodded. "It's not going to be easy. But if we don't do something now, nothing will change. And I can't keep living in a world where beauty is the only thing that matters. There has to be more than that." Alex's heart swelled with admiration for her. Maya had always known this was wrong, and she wasn't afraid to fight for what was right, even if it meant risking everything. For the first time, Alex felt truly aligned with her. He had grown beyond his initial attraction to her. It was her strength, her intellect, and her courage that had drawn him in. Now, standing beside her, he realized that this wasn't just about them anymore. This was about challenging a system that had been in place for far too long. The next day, they approached the tribe with their proposal. The women gathered, as they always did, in the central clearing, their eyes fixed on Alex and Maya with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. The air was thick with tension as Maya stepped forward, her voice steady but fierce. "We have come to a realization," she began, her eyes sweeping over the gathered women. "We can no longer judge each other based on superficial standards. Beauty isn't just skin deep. It's about strength, intelligence, kindness. It's about what we contribute to each other and to this world, not how we look." There was a moment of silence, a hushed murmur rippling through the crowd. Some of the women exchanged glances, unsure of how to react. Alex stood behind Maya, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew this wasn't going to be easy, but he also knew it was the right thing to do. One of the women, the leader of the tribe, stepped forward. "You're suggesting that we abandon everything we've known? That we no longer rate ourselves based on our beauty?" Her voice was sharp, but there was an undercurrent of doubt in it. She was questioning, not just challenging. Maya met her gaze without hesitation. "I'm suggesting that we redefine beauty. We stop seeing it as something that can be measured and rated, and we start seeing it as something that comes from within. True beauty is the strength to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. It's about the courage to be vulnerable, to love without judgment, and to accept one another for who we really are." Alex could see the uncertainty in the tribe's faces. The women were starting to think, starting to question everything they had been taught. But there was still resistance. One woman, who had always been the most vocal about the ratings, shook her head. "But if we don't have ratings, if we don't have beauty to measure, then how will we know our place in society? How will we know who is worthy of leadership?" Maya's response was calm but unwavering. "Leadership isn't about beauty. It's about wisdom, compassion, and the ability to guide others with integrity. The tribe doesn't need a ranking system. It needs leaders who understand what it means to be human, and that means understanding our flaws as much as our strengths." There was a heavy silence as the tribe absorbed her words. Alex felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was the moment that could change everything, or it could destroy them both. He wasn't sure how the tribe would react, but he knew that Maya was right. They couldn't continue down this path. After what felt like an eternity, the leader of the tribe spoke again, her voice softer this time. You both make a compelling argument, but we've lived by these rules for generations. How can we just throw them away? Maya's expression softened, and she took a step forward. We don't throw them away. We build something better. We acknowledge our past, but we don't let it define our future. We don't have to be perfect to be worthy of respect. We're all beautiful in our own ways, and that's enough. The women exchanged more looks, and Alex could see the shift in the air. Maya had planted a seed, and now it was beginning to grow. The idea that beauty wasn't the be-all and end-all of their existence was taking root in their minds. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was possible. Finally, the leader nodded, a small but significant gesture. Perhaps it's time to consider another way. The weight Alex had been carrying seemed to lift in that moment. It wasn't a complete victory. There was still much work to be done. But they had taken the first step toward a new future. Maya had been right. True beauty came from within, and by rejecting the shallow ratings that had defined their society for so long, the tribe could begin to create something new, something real. As the women of the tribe began to discuss the changes they would implement, Alex found himself standing at the center of it all, not as an outsider, but as someone who had helped them see beyond the surface. And as he glanced over at Maya, he knew that they had both found something worth fighting for. This wasn't just about challenging a system. It was about creating a new world, one where connection, understanding, and true beauty could flourish. And in that world, Alex realized, he had finally found his place.